our channel and to my next installment of the card comparison series. Today we're looking at a couple of decks, both put out by US Game System. On left here I have the Aquarian Tarot. This one was illustrated by David Palladini. And on the right here, this is the Greer Tarot. This one had this all ready to go here. So this one was illustrated by Bill Greer under the direction of Lloyd Morgan. So these are both mass market available decks. They come in a very, similar, pretty much exactly the same style little cardboard box. I'll just show, I guess, by comparison, the backs. So here again, we've got the Aquarian Tarot and the Greer. Looks like that, kind of upright and reverse. Comes both with a little standard title card. And then we have our little cards that just say a little bit about both of the illustrators. On each of those, and the little guidebooks that they come with, nothing really to write home about, just a little, 30-page maybe, if it even is that much. I think this one's maybe 20. Just a little pull-out thing. It has little one sentence or just a couple of words on each card, as well as I think both of these have at least one spread that they've got tucked away in there. So the reason why I decided to do a comparison on these two decks, partly because, they're by the same publishing house and they are both mass market decks. But what I look for in my comparison is something that is similar between two decks. So what I noticed with these two is they're quite zoomed in. So especially in comparison to the standard Rider-Waite-Smith Smith-Waite deck, you can see, keep these on the correct side here, we don't have really full-bodied characters or full-bodied images in all of our all throughout the cards. So you can see here these are just a comparison of the Fool cards. We're kind of zoomed in rather than getting to see their whole body, and we'll see that theme carry out through, not like specifically through the entire deck, but I just have that in my mind of both of these decks. I know when I'm reaching for them, I'm getting something a little more zoomed in. So even for example, like here are our Two of Pentacles. Also, I would say, the artwork is a little bit not the same style by any means, but it's kind of similar. And you'll see that as we go through and do a more closer comparison of each of the cards, all of the cards from each of the decks. So let's get the camera switched around and I'll go through and do my comparison. If that's what you're here for, just to look at the cards, you can just watch the beginning of the video. I will put in all the fun things that I have to say and how I think they read and all my extra comments at the very end. So let's get started. Okay, great. Now we've got the focus on our cards. So again, we've got the Greer here will be on the right and the Aquarian on the left. You'll notice the incredible color saturations out of the Greer, and especially side by side with the Aquarian that has a much more muted and a limited color palette. Both very beautiful decks. So let's take a look at the cards. All right, so that was a look at the cards. Let's talk a little bit about what I think about them, how I think they read, and all the rest. So, I mean, these decks are even more alike than I had really thought before. Until I actually just did this flip through side by side, I really noticed a lot of things that were even all the more similar. But I guess what I'm mostly going to focus on here is the differences and how I find they read and all the rest. So just something interesting that I thought was, so here we have our Six of Cups and our, oops, let me zoom that out a little bit, clean this up a hair. So yeah, our Six of Cups is in the middle and our Seven of Cups on the outside. That's interesting. So I guess what I want to say about that is my initial thought of looking at the image, and this is, I guess, what I'll say for a couple of different cards in both of these decks, that what my mind goes to and what I think of when I see an image is a little bit different than what the card actually is. Because I could very much so see myself, without looking at the words here or without looking at the number here, just having an image of the cups so close and all filled, that I might get a quick thought that these are the Seven of Cups. Of course, upon closer inspection, we do see that we've got the little children or whoever they are interacting in the back. And of course, the Seven of Cups, we actually have all of the different things filling the cups. But that I didn't notice necessarily before, but picked up on while we were just doing that flip through there. But that's an interesting about those cards. I don't know that I had, I found this Three of Cups interesting, that they're all staring at you. And I have had a few instances where that card has come up in readings where it's very different from our traditional standard Rider-Waite-Smith, where we have the girls that are all cheersing, right? Like this is pretty intimidating. This is a little bit intense. They're all staring at us for one reason or another. So that's kind of neat. Here we have a little more standard symbolism of one looking away and the rest are kind of cheersing. And yeah, I guess that's something else I'll point out immediately here, is that our aces, all of the aces from the Aquarian tarot don't have the hands. So it's not the hand of the thing coming out with the cup, wand, sword, so to speak. It's just the actual thing itself. So I appreciate that. I think that's actually really quite beautiful. There's a couple other things I wanted to talk about. So let's just go through them, I guess, a little bit side by side. Where was it? Okay, so yeah, the Knight of Wands. I guess even just the Knights in general. So this is something that I will say when I'm looking at them. When I'm, I read decks with images on them or illustrated decks, very much so looking at the image and what I see going on. So when we have a lot more zoomed in image, as you can see here, the Knight of Wands and the Knight of Pentacles, we don't have that extra symbolism that we would maybe have, say, in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, where we have this gentleman on a horse just giving her, and this one on the horse going very slowly. In fact, we don't even really know if they're on horses. We can't totally see that based on just these images. Sorry, where's my Knight of Coins here? Yeah, so here he is in this deck. So there's a little bit more, or I guess less, that you can pull from the image, and a little more you have to breathe into it when if you're someone who reads very visually, because there's not that, zoomed out, seeing a whole lot more going on. So, looking at this without the words, if you're just someone who looks at images, they're not massively different. I mean, they are. That's when we can see the coins and we can see the rods and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's just another thing I wanted to point out. Where are we? Let's put you back. Don't know that it was with the Suit of Wands that I had wanted to talk about next. I don't know that there was anything I wanted to say about our wands. But yeah, I mean, you can see the images are just really like very, very similar. Another reason why I selected to do these as a comparison. Yeah, I already mentioned the no hands in the aces situation. So I did have something to say about the swords cards. Let me pull those back together here. I tried to keep them in order because I wanted to discuss them, be able to find them a little more quickly. Love this Queen of Swords. That's so iconic, and perhaps it's because she's what they put on the box, but I think she's fantastic. Really, really nice. Also, the Land of the Mustaches, quite a bit with both of these decks. There's a number of mustached characters, which is kind of neat. Here, okay, so this was it. The 9 of Swords in the Morgan Greer deck. Again, I will say this is like similar to what I just said about the cups, where that looks very 8 of Swords-y to me. Without counting the swords and without looking at the number there, I can still very much see the whole idea of the boundness coming from an 8 of Swords traditional type imagery. Whereas here, of course, that's our 9. So we don't have that inherent nightmare, you know, the sitting in the bed, holding the hands, or holding the head. You know what I mean? It's really quite different. So that was one thing I wanted to point out as well. I don't know if there was anything else I had to say about the swords. Oh yes, there's something I had to say about the swords. This. So, one of the things I had to get over was reading decks that did not have reversible backs. And in case if it was hard to see before, the Morgan Greer back is not fully reversible. You have this one little star here. So if you're wanting to know, is the card upright or reversed, just by looking from the back, that little baby star is at the bottom. And I guess it's the same here for the Aquarian tarot. It's not fully reversible either, but it's quite, let me do a side by side. So, you know, it's not fully reversible, but it's quite geometric. It's quite loud, unless you're kind of sitting there looking at different little parts of it. It's not hugely obvious, upright versus reversed. So once I got over that, because then I could buy decks that had backs that weren't completely reversible. Another thing that I struggle with or have a challenge reading is that Ace of Swords when the sword is pointing towards you in the upright position. So if you're someone who reads with reversals, and if you haven't seen our podcast on why we read reversals, I highly recommend that. That's a great episode. I think it's worth your time. But I mean, it's a very different thing having the sword, whether it's being held by a hand or not, pointing away from you versus when it's sticking towards you. Because I'm very much so trained and very expecting to see when the Ace of Swords comes up reversed that it's now pointing at me. It's stabbing something. It's just very different than when it comes up pointing away from me. So the fact that they put the Ace of Swords with the upright position facing down, there's a few other decks that do this. Oh, that's something to get used to. It's just something that, I mean, if you use this deck a lot, you'd probably get over it, but just something to keep in mind, because that's really something that trips me up immediately if you're just looking at image recall as soon as you pick up a deck. So that was Wands. Did we talk about, I don't know, was there anything in, yeah, we did go through the cups already. Cups, oh, sorry. The coins card. I don't know if there was anything I necessarily wanted to point out about the coins. Oh yeah, okay, I guess I would just say quickly about the 5 of coins, which are super, I would say really quite different between both of these two decks. You know, we see we see blood here. We see like a recently injured, or like it's a very different type of injury that we see kind of from this card versus what we see over here. I guess more so to compare the two. The 10 of coins as well. I think I maybe wanted to talk about that one. Where did I just put my coins? Oh, right here. Yeah, I mean, this one in the Morgan Greer deck, they went very different. Again, just kind of going off of the image and what we're seeing here in the artwork. It's not your traditional, we got the family and the old person and all the rest. It's quite closed off, you know, is that they're having their happily ever after and they're saying goodbye to everybody else, or they taking a moment to themselves. You know, they went very different on that 10 of coins. I think it's beautiful though. It's a really, I don't know, I like it. I find it reads well. So let's before I go rambling on, I don't know. Oh yes, okay, the majors, sorry. I'm trying a different system for the flip through this time. Turns out we should probably go back to a different way of holding them and all the rest. So, okay, the majors. I guess I really wanted to talk about the Sun card, which was interesting in the Aquarian deck that there's no people here. We just have this beautiful image of this radiant sun, and the sun has this cool little look on his face. The moon, again, we're missing, or at least don't have that traditional standard imagery of the dogs and the you know, this whole thing, everything that we've got going on over here. The star I found super interesting is that we just have this big bird. And when we talk about how these decks read, for me, first time I've had that card come up, or when I was going through the deck kind of discussing and thinking about what I would see in these cards, that card doesn't really speak to me a whole lot. Without me projecting a whole bunch of stuff about birds onto that particular card. It's just such a different image than what we would see traditionally with that star card. Like, you know, there's this bird versus the woman with the two vases. So they definitely went very different on that card. The devil here, again, on the Morgan Greer side, super different. We don't have, you know, the chained naked people, which we do see here in the Aquarian deck. So certainly I would say both of these are not complete Rider-Waite-Smith clones, although of course of them are, I would definitely put them in the category of clone decks. They're not ace for ace, you know, one for one, be able to just totally, if you're someone who reads based on the imagery, if you're someone who has more set associations to certain cards, you might find that it's not as big of a problem. But imagery wise, there's like very, very different stuff going on here in compared to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I know I'm supposed to be comparing them to each other, but just thought I would throw that in there as well. They're both really nice decks. I've done, I would say, considerably more readings with the Morgan Greer deck. I'm just very, very drawn to how bright it is. It's so colorful. It's so fun. It is very saturated. I mean, you pull this deck out, if anybody sees these cards, like, they're just gorgeous. They're very loud. They have a lot to say. They're so colorful. On the other side, we have it's so much more muted. And I think that's even more stark that I'm doing this comparison between these two decks. The color palette is very similar all throughout, with the pinks and the purples and the kind of light yellows and the gray greens. You know, it's a very muted light color palette in compared to our super saturated Morgan Greer deck. So for that reason, I find it translates, at least for my readings, that Morgan Greer deck speaks to me a bit more. I find it a little easier to read, pick up. Just the first time I read with it without really doing a thorough study of the cards, I found it quite a bit easier to read than the Aquarian deck. Because it's not as, especially if you look at it at a big spread, you don't have as much distinguishing qualities, I guess, between the cards without really looking at them, because the color palette is a little more limited with the Aquarian deck. So for me personally, in terms of readability, I find myself reaching for the Morgan Greer deck considerably more. In fact, I have not done very many readings at all with the Aquarian Tarot. But I do really like it. I think the artwork is beautiful. Some of the faces, to be honest, I find a little, I don't want to say creepy, but I don't really connect to that particular mode of artwork for some of the faces that are drawn. It just seems, it's not that it doesn't look cohesive with the rest of the drawing. It's just very different. You know, these are all, in comparison again to the Morgan Greer, I just find it a little more cohesive, and it all just sort of flows really well. Like this person's face fits well, and you know, it's all the same sort of style, where it seems like there's a very stark style change when they drew the faces of these cards, which took me a little bit to get used to as I show a card that doesn't have a face. But you see what I mean? Like, there could have very well been something else drawn there. I don't know. It just sticks out a little bit differently. And yeah, these strength cards too. So we have the little more brute force, Herculean, sort of a Knight of Swordsy, almost type Emperor type character here in the strength card from the Aquarian deck, which completely is a different image than what we would see from our regular lady in a beautiful white dress playing with her lion type of a strength. So there's certain things that are really quite different. Here again, we don't have the two horses. I think these lovers cards are beautiful, but again, we don't have that big angel and the fire and the trees and the whole extra symbolism that we see there. Here, the Hierophant, we don't have our little, I don't want to call them minions, but the people that are listening to what the Hierophant has to say. It is like they are definitely a little bit different. But I think if you are someone who's very fluent with the Rider-Waite-Smith system, you'd have no problem picking up either of these decks. They do both read well. The few readings I've done with the Aquarian Tarot, I haven't had any issues with it. I just don't find that it's my personal favorite type of artwork. So with that being said, I think that was all I wanted to talk about with these two decks. Please let me know in the comments what you think, like if you have either of these decks, if you read with either of them, what your thoughts were. If you don't have them, which one you liked better. I love to hear your comments and what people have to say about my comparisons, or just about about the decks in general. And please let me know if there's any decks you'd like me to compare. Either I might have them in my collection, or if I have a friend or someone who has them, I could invite someone on the show, and we could do a bit of a comparison that way. So at any rate, I guess I'll wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching. Please, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. We've got a Patreon going now, so if you want to join in on some of our monthly events and get some really cool other deals and discounts and benefits, put the Patreon link below. And we teach tarot if you want to learn the courses with us, and we all do readings and all the rest. So at any rate, yeah, thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for engaging with us. Please like, subscribe and share. To book a personal, in-depth reading and to learn more about our incredible courses in tarot and astrology, please visit our website www.thepomegranate.grove.com.